Hello and welcome to the Powerhouse Woman Show. I'm your host, Monica Pierre. Thank you for joining us today for the beginning of season 5. Oh my goodness, 5 seasons. It is hard to believe, but so grateful that we are coming to you for our fifth season. And our show is very simple. We bring together powerhouse women so they can talk about their story. They talk about what they're doing, their work in the world. They talk about lessons learned. They're all not always pretty. We all stumble, we all fall, we all get back up. And they share their wisdom. So thank you for joining us. And I look forward to another 5, 10, whatever happens. I am for the ride. Well, how do you feel when it comes to having success and having enjoyment, having happiness? Do you think that the two are exclusive or can they coexist? That's what we're going to be talking today about with our very special guest, Dr. Yewande Olamide, and she is a therapist. She is a physician. She's a former emergency room doctor, and she has amazing podcasts. So we welcome you to the show, Dr. Yewande.
Thanks for having me, Monica. It is such a pleasure. And congrats on 5 seasons. That's a big deal. That's a very big
I look and
deal.
go, this is our fifth season. Okay, well, let's roll with
Congratulations.
it. Let's roll with it. Well, let's begin. First of all, Happy New Year to you.
Happy
It's
New Year.
2024. And over the past 3 years, so many, particularly powerhouse women, have made decisions about what they want their lives to look like, feel like. Some are completely saying, you know what, this grind culture, not for me anymore. I want to have happiness and joy and do the work that brings me those things as well. So I know you're having a practice. First of all, tell us about what you do with Cami Counseling.
Yeah, so at Cami Counseling, I help overwhelmed professionals, executives, entrepreneurs. I help them really find, again, that balance between work and finding peace and joy in their day to day lives using very practical tips and strategies based on evidence that will bring them that satisfaction. And so I work mostly with women. Actually, right now, 100% of my practice is women. But yeah, I really help them find that satisfaction and peace in their day to day lives.
Well, give us an idea when they come to you, what is their lives looking like till they get to the point where, you know what, stop, help me.
Yeah, the word that keeps coming up over and over again for these women is overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed, they are stressed, they are anxious. Some of them might even feel depressed. And they just don't know which direction to take things. They know that there's something missing, and they know that the way they're living isn't what they had dreamed of growing up as a little girl. And they're just looking for help. They're looking for some clarity. They're looking for someone to help them unpack what it is that they want. They know that the life that they're living isn't the kind of life that they want to live. And so they're looking for help in navigating just the overwhelm, really. And that's really where
Tell
they're
us,
starting.
yes, tell us your backstory because I first became aware of you as a really an ER doctor who made some changes in her own life. So, what was that like for you, and what have you learned since you made that decision?
Yeah. So my journey started. So let me backtrack. Not all my life. I didn't know I wanted to be a doctor when I was a little girl. I actually thought I wanted to be a teacher. But somewhere in my second, third year of university, I decided, you know what, medicine, being a doctor is probably something that I could get really good at, something that I would enjoy. I love helping people. And so that just seemed like, the path to go. And no regrets at all. So I went through the journey of medical school. I went through the training to be an ER physician. And I practiced as an ER physician, so between training and practicing for about 10 years. And coming out of that, it wasn't an intentional decision. I kind of fumbled my way out of medicine, out of traditional medicine. I still am a practicing physician. But it was my maternity leave in 2019 that really got me thinking, is this all there is to life? Just, going to work, working those shifts, and not really feeling like I was making the type of impact that I hoped to make in people's lives. And the thought of that really confused a lot of people. What do you mean? You're saving lives every day. How could that not be impact? But the truth is that success, happiness, satisfaction is very subjective. I have colleagues who have done amazing work as ER physicians, and they've done that for 50 years for some people. And they love it. They wake up to that and they feel excited about going to work every day. But that just wasn't me. I wasn't excited going into work. I wasn't excited leaving work. I just knew that something was missing. And so that started the journey for me, a journey of self discovery, reconnecting to some of the things that I enjoyed as a little girl growing up, tapping into my strengths, and just trying to figure out how I could bring all of that together. And so in 2021 was when I decided, after doing all of that work, that being a therapist would really be a good fit. Again, I had no idea that I would love it as much as I do, but it just seemed like the right next step. And so going through my training as a therapist led me to really discovering who I was. And in November of 2022 was when I opened my own practice. So that's the story in a nutshell.
That's a powerful story. And one word, I think I heard a couple of words, the next step. I think oftentimes we don't value that it's a step, a step, a step, and not the whole pathway. But that's kind of difficult. I mean, in so many cultures, particularly where women are grinding, are building something, are doing noble, wonderful things. So other than getting to the point where you're not having joy anymore, you don't really look forward to going to work or doing your business or whatever it is, what are some other signs that powerhouse women should look for and be on the lookout for?
And that's a great question, Monica, because many powerhouse women, I call them givers and achievers because these women give, 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 and they're also very ambitious. Many of us will ignore the communication between our minds and our bodies. Our bodies are always telling us to slow down, that something is wrong, something is missing, whether it's headaches, whether for me, it was my hair falling out. It could be sleep disturbances. For some people, it's nightmares. For some people, all sorts of things. I have women in my practice who have come in with thyroid dysfunction, high blood pressure. And so our bodies are always communicating with us, but we are almost conditioned to ignore that and just power through and just, ignore it. I'll deal with it later, or maybe take a Tylenol here, an Advil there, and just kind of put a Band-Aid over the symptoms. Whereas the root cause of many of these symptoms are a deep dissatisfaction with where life really is for us at the moment. So that's one of the first things, is really getting to the point where you're paying attention to the signs that our bodies are telling us, because oftentimes it's communicating, hey, something is off here and I really need you to pay attention now.
Because if you don't, then our bodies will really get our attention and we won't like what will happen at that point. So, what are you seeing in your practice for people who really ignore when our bodies are talking to us and telling us these things and communicating with us?
What I'm seeing is flat out burnout. And similar to, I always like to give the women in my practice the analogy of a car. You're driving down the highway and it's been full speed ahead all your life. All you've known is go, 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 go. And at some point, the car engine light is going to say, hey, I need your attention. We need to stop. We're overheating. Or maybe it's the fuel gauge saying, okay, we're running on low here. It's time to pull over and pay attention and fill me up. But how many of us have been in that situation? I know I have. We were
Yes.
like, okay, just 1 more kilometer or 1 more mile, depending on where you are. Let's just make it to the next stop, and then to the next stop, and then to the next stop. At some point, the car is just going to say, ma'am, I'm done. And it's just going to completely stop on you. I have definitely had situations where my car has said, yeah, we're not doing this anymore. And what that has meant is me walking, pulling over, walking to a gas station and getting gas to put in my car, all because I didn't pay attention to those warning signs. And so what I'm seeing is burnout. And what that looks like is sometimes even just not being able to get out of bed in the morning. For days, weeks, months, even years on end. It feels like some will describe it just like a ton of bricks, brain fog, nausea, upset stomach, irritability, outbursts of anger. And so there's a myriad of symptoms that come along with that. But when we really get to the point where we've completely ignored the signs, that burnout, where the engine stops completely, that's where people get to.
Right. And then it goes beyond being stranded on the side of the road. There's some very serious health issues as well. So how do we get to the point where we can say, this is what I want? I want a work-life satisfaction. And what does that mean, as far as a definition? Because again, we've heard balance, right? And
Yeah.
I'm hearing more satisfaction. So what are some
Yeah.
of the differences and distinctions?
So balance, a lot of people will say that balance is bogus. I happen to think that because sometimes when we're in the grind, we're in the grind. And because we are of limited capacity, something will have to give. And sometimes that might be our sleep. Sometimes that might be our relationships. But as long as it's temporary and it doesn't become a lifestyle, I think it's okay for things to kind of get off balance for a temporary season. But as far as when we're talking about work life satisfaction, what that means for me is being engaged in meaningful work, work that is meaningful to you. And again, like I said before, this is very subjective. So are you engaged in work that gets you excited to wake up in the morning? Do you have a reason to get up in the morning because you know that the work that you're engaging in is going to be fulfilling? So that's the first part for me. The second part for me, and this is where the life piece comes in, is I have that time freedom. So in addition to engaging in meaningful work, I have that time freedom to invest as much as I need to and want to in my most valuable relationships. And that includes my relationship with myself. As a woman of faith, that's my relationship with God. And so it's not just, doing this work and just, putting in all my time in that work, but it's meaningful to me, and it's also giving me that the time that I need to invest in my relationships. And finally, that work life satisfaction is having the resources, specifically the financial resources, to be able to say no to opportunities that don't serve me or serve my values. And I know that this is something that is definitely a privilege to be able to do. Not everybody has that. But there is an assessment that I do like to go through with the women that I work with, where we look at where do all of these come into place? And that pay piece, the income piece, is also very important. Because yes, we can say, follow your passion, do what you love, but let's be real. We also have bills to pay and
Yes.
financial goals that we're working towards. And yeah, so just to summarize, I'm talking about meaningful work. I'm talking about time freedom so I can invest in my most meaningful relationships. And I'm also talking about options. So the ability to say no to financial opportunities that are out of alignment.
Yes, absolutely. And I think again, maybe you're not going to say no to everything that comes along, but if you say no once a week or once a month, those no's really start to add up. Or if you say yes to what you really want to do more than what people expect you to do. If you are very successful, I have noticed too, Dr. Yewande, and you may agree, that people get very comfortable with you in that role. But when you say, no, I'm not an ER doctor, I'm a therapist, they give you the side eye, like, please. And you have to, if you're not strong and convinced that this is your path now, you're going to waver and you're going to go back to what it is you had been doing that really has you so tired or don't want to get up in the morning or get out of bed.
Yeah. And Monica, yes, we're talking about external pressure, but there's also that internal pressure as well too. Because when your identity is tied to a certain thing or a certain way of being, if you are Jane the performer or Kate the executor, right? If you have that reputation, or Jill the nice girl, right? If you have that reputation, even internally, it can feel like a struggle. Yewande, the ER doctor, right? This is what everyone has known me as. And so when we tie our identity to either our profession or a way of being that no longer serves us, it is a journey to detach ourselves from that. And I certainly went through that. It's not easy, but definitely necessary if we're thinking about our overall work-life satisfaction.
Before we go, two things I want people to know where to find you, but I want you to just talk about your podcast, which is amazing, the title, and we get it. Yeah. Happy Without Medicine podcast.
Yeah, so I started Happy Without Medicine in May of 2022. Yeah, 2022. And so, what I talk about are just these practical tips that I share in my practice. Obviously, because I am a person, I'm just a single person. I only have 24 hours a day. I'm only able to see a certain number of women. So the podcast is really my way of sharing these tips and strategies that I see come up a lot in my practice with a more global audience. I know that there's women from different parts of the world that listen to the podcast. So even though I'm not able to see them one on one in practice, the podcast talks about strategies. For example, finding your core values, being able to say no, even if you're known as a nice person, how to make challenging changes, for example, switching jobs from something that you've always done to something else. So those are the kinds of things that I talk about in my podcast.
Right. So, everybody, I have my phone. I'm going to make sure that we follow you and we listen to your show and subscribe and all those great things that let people know about it. Finally, how can people stay in touch with you, find out what you're doing, and any big projects that you have coming up in 2024 that you can share with us at this time?
Yeah, so I'm active on Instagram, and my handle is at doctor. So that's dr.yoade, and Monica has that on the screen there. So this year, I'm really again focusing on reaching women outside of my geographical area here in Toronto. There are only, again, a certain amount of my wait list exploded within 2 weeks when I opened up, because obviously women are looking for a therapist who look like them, who have shared experiences. And so my wait list, I had to close at some point. But I am coming out with a workshop that's opening up next Thursday, where I'm going to be talking about strategies for dealing with overwhelm. And more information on that can be found in the link in my Instagram bio. But yeah, that's one of the projects that I'm really excited about this year. I'm also excited about doing more workshops with corporations, and a lot of the women that come in, it's work-related stress that I'm seeing and having to help them navigate. So I'm also really excited this year about going into offices and organizations and just talking to the employees, the leaders, about how to really manage stress and overwhelm, so that again they can really experience
Mhm.
work life satisfaction.
Absolutely. And I just feel a shift too, that, women in particular are saying, you know what? No, I'm done. I'm through. No, it's going to be different. And it becomes different. It stops when we stop it and,
Absolutely.
and make a change. Thank you so much for being with us on the Powerhouse Show, Woman Show, and the fact that we kick off our fifth season, and what a wonderful topic in which to kick off our fifth season. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you all for joining us. And we appreciate you. And we'll have more great interviews like the one you just heard. So remember that you are a powerhouse woman.